Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. It is late July, and we are looking at the Big 12 in college football right now with Troy West from allplayswin.com. Troy West, of course, our regular viewers know exactly who he is. He's given us great winning advice in football going back many years and in other sports as well, most notably in the NBA this past year. We had an awesome record in the NBA playoffs against the spread for free in our videos. Very interested to hear what he has to say about the Big 12. Troy West from allplayswin.com. Thanks for being back with us.
Hey, thanks a lot, Peter. I appreciate it. Yeah, I couldn't be more excited to be covering college football with you guys. I cannot believe that we're just right around the corner. And hey, we preview all conferences. We obviously, you specialize in the Pac-12, but the Big 12, another conference that's very intriguing this year. Two teams that very much potentially could be playing in that 4-team playoff. So yeah,
well, let's start with TCU and Baylor in the Big 12. Now, obviously, both of those teams are going to be awesome this year. Both of them, among the favorites to make the playoffs. As far as their likely ATS record, though, this upcoming year, I don't know, because expectations are very high for them. They are going to be awesome, but there's a lot of strength in the Big 12 that I'm seeing this year. Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Texas, Oklahoma, all looking kind of strong this year. Kansas State, always a threat to be undervalued. So as great and awesome as TCU and Baylor are, I'm not exactly sure that I'd like them to be, good bets against the spread this year. What's your take on TCU and Baylor? Is there either one of those teams that you think might particularly be overvalued this year?
Well, we all know any given Saturday, right, Pete? Especially when you're in a conference like the Big 12, playing a road game, like you said, in Texas, in Kansas State, some of these top-tier teams. I do think in the end, Baylor and TCU, one of those two teams will win this conference. One of those two teams will prevail. Baylor obviously loses Bryce Petty, but they do have a veteran coming in, a kid named Seth Russell. The kid's supposed to be outstanding. I don't think they'll drop off too much. And then TCU really brings back everybody, especially their quarterback, Boykin. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I think TCU, Pete, they're obviously they're already a 14-point favorite at Minnesota week 1, but I think throughout the course of the year, I do think ATS, they will come out ahead, and I do think Baylor will come out ahead ATS as well. Two incredible football teams.
All right, well, maybe there will be more clear, easier value to suss out with some of the other teams in the Big 12. I guess let's start with Oklahoma State, right? Last year was, kind of a rebuilding year for Oklahoma State. It seems like they're rebuilt now, though, and signs are pointing up. They're the fourth. They have the fourth shortest odds to win the Big 12 at plus 700 behind TCU, Baylor, and Oklahoma. But I'm thinking maybe Oklahoma State will be at least a good bet against the spread this year if they don't necessarily outperform in terms of the win total.
Yeah, no, I think Oklahoma State could be a really good football team this year. Coach Gundy's been there for quite some time now. They did rebuild. They even finished last year on a strong momentum note, taking down Washington in the bowl game. They looked really good, and they're a young team. They can run the football. Good size offensive line.
Yeah.
I think overs are going to be a great bet for them. This is a team that scores a lot of points. Their defense still a little bit in between right now. Lackluster, not very physical, but that offense gets up to the football, and they score a lot of points. So I think overs are a good bet, but I do think ATS, they'll be a pretty good bet this year as well.
And then Texas is also another team in sort of a similar situation where they've been rebuilding a little bit, but it looks like this might be, a year where I don't know, it's hard to get a read on Texas. They tend to be a team that's overvalued when they're having a down year, but they've been kind of overvalued recently, and they have big question marks on the offensive line and at receiver, but they also have some positives. The defense is probably going to be a strength again this year. I'm thinking that the offense could possibly prove a lot with their new schemes, and I'm thinking maybe we might actually see a profitable year ATS from Texas. What do you think? What's your take on Texas, Troy?
I could see it, Pete. Absolutely. This is a well-coached football team. We know that they've underachieved under Coach, Mac Brown here for the last few years, but now Charlie Strong coming in. This is a good football coach that can go out and recruit. They had a few games last year where people really scratched their head and said, wow, this Texas team can play football. We'll see throughout the course of the year. They do have a tough schedule. They have a tough non-conference schedule as well. They're a double-digit underdog in their first football game against Notre Dame, which that really surprises me. But at the same time, Pete, this is a good football team. Texas is always very respectable. ATS, I think they will be better this year, and I look for them to maybe have a bounce-back season.
Okay, and then Oklahoma, the third choice in the Big 12, they're plus 550 to win it. Their season win total 8.5, minus 130. I'm scratching my head just a little bit with Oklahoma, though. I'm thinking maybe they'll be overvalued this year. Last year they had a leaky secondary, gave up a lot of big plays. Their offense, they have a new play caller coming in, and he did well. at East Carolina, implementing, like a spread attack, but I'm not sure if they have the quarterback to run that at peak level. They have a great running back, of course, but is that going to jive well with the offensive schemes that they call? There's a lot of talent in Oklahoma, but expectations are not that low. I'm thinking maybe Oklahoma might be overvalued. What's your take on Oklahoma, Troy?
Pete, if you look at their schedule and some of the research that I've done, they're going to be favored by double digits, most likely in 8 of their first 9 football games. So schedule really plays into their favor without a doubt. And like you said, Pete,
well, maybe they'll be overvalued in those big favorite spreads.
They could be. But I think looking at it, Vegas is thinking this because you got to understand this team lost 5 football games last year. That is unbelievable for a Stoops football team. It does not happen and get blown out in the bowl game against Clemson. So they were really, really bad last year. Will they bounce back this year? That remains to be unseen. But they do have the talent to go out and win a lot of games. They have a lot of talent to win ATS. We'll see if they bounce back from what they did last year, which was a complete disaster.
And then another team, which is an interesting team, Kansas State. In general, with Bill Snyder, at head coach, they've in general been a team that's been undervalued, a team you generally want to look to bet on as opposed to against. They did lose a lot of playmakers this year. The personnel, maybe a little bit of a down year for Kansas State, but, never want to bet against Bill Snyder as a rule. But, I'm not sure if this is a year where Kansas State might be a good bet. What's your take on Kansas State?
Yeah, Kansas State, I do think will take a step back this year. They lost a lot of playmakers. They lose Lockett to the draft. They lose a few other playmakers. And they really didn't bring back a good core guy. So Snyder's going to have his work cut out for him this year, unlike many others. He's going to have some late nights having to do some film, and I don't know if the old man's got that in him. But I do think Kansas State takes a step back this year. We'll have to look at some of the spreads, but I think they're a 6-6 team, might even flirt with 5-7. Take a look at some spots with Kansas State going against them.
All right, and then another Big 12 team that I'm thinking might, my gut feel is that they might have a good year against the spread is Texas Tech, right? They always have an explosive offense, and that should be the case again this year. They're going to have to improve the defense, though. They did hire a new defensive coordinator, and from, what I'm reading and seeing and thinking and hearing, they do have some talent on defense for him to work with. So, if their defense can improve a little bit and their offense can maintain, Texas Tech might be a decent bet against the spread. Expectations is still not that high based on their preseason win totals and odds to win the Big 12. What do you think about Texas Tech?
Yeah, they showed glimpses last year without a doubt, and I've got this team circled to be much improved. This is a team that is pretty solid on all facets of the football. They're just not good at anything. They're okay at everything. Yeah. They are well coached. Like you said, they've got some players that can do some things. I've got them circled as a team that could be a much better football team. I think they could be 7-5. 6-6, and I think against ATS they could be undervalued throughout the course of the year. So keep an eye on Texas Tech. It's a team I think is going to be pretty darn good this year.
Right. Okay. Well, I've introduced every team in the Big 12 as a team that is either good but might be overvalued, or a team that I'm thinking is going to have betting value. A lot of strength in the Big 12 this year. Now let's move on to a team that I have circled as fade all the way. See if you agree, and that is West Virginia. Their season win total 7.5. It's juiced a little bit to the under. Their odds to win the Big 12 are plus 1,700. I'm thinking that West Virginia might have a terrible year against the spread, considering the talent that they'll be facing and their questions on the roster this year. What do you think, Troy?
Yeah, I've got them picked 5th right now in the Big 12, but that doesn't say much. I think once you get to the middle of the Big 12, it's really a clusterfuck in a lot of ways. It's going to be a tough way to understand until we see a couple of games in action. But this West Virginia team does have a lot of talent, without a doubt. They have a lot of talent, but they're one of those teams that seem to have letdown games throughout the course of the year. They do get Baylor. They do get TCU. They do get Kansas State. It looks like they're all on the road. This is going to be a brutal schedule. So I can agree with you in a lot of ways, but they do have the talent to overachieve if they can get it going at the right time. We'll see. But, I've got them picked 5th. We'll see what happens with West Virginia.
All right, well, someone's going to have to be getting ATS losses unless all these teams wind up around 50-50, which is very much a possibility. Iowa State could be another candidate for ATS losses, although even Iowa State, has some reasons for optimism. They have a very strong receiving core. That could keep them in games as a big underdog in some of these Big 12 matchups. What's your take on Iowa State?
Yeah, Iowa State and Kansas are going to be battling in the basement without a doubt. Both these teams not very good, Pete. Didn't really improve. Recruiting classes were down this year. Iowa State and Kansas, I think, are really going to be fighting for the bottom basement here. I think they're going to struggle to get 2, 3, 4 wins out of this conference. So I've got fade alert on both those teams.
All right, so interesting conference, the Big 12. Let's sum up our thoughts, Troy West, right now, okay? My thoughts in general, as I've said, I'm vaguely looking to possible covers from Oklahoma State, Texas, and Texas Tech. And I think I'm definitely looking to fade West Virginia. In general, I'm going to be looking for a lot of overs with some of these big offenses and maybe defenses that are not quite as awesome as the offenses. TCU and Baylor, I think it's going to be a wait-and-see situation. Take it week by week and probably 50-50 against the spread with both of them. What are your general primary thoughts on the Big 12 as of right now, Troy?
I would agree with most of what you said. Like you said, Oklahoma State, I think could be a good valued team. Some overs. I think Oklahoma falls into that category as well. But I think overall, Pete, my bold prediction for you, I truly believe TCU is a team that has the opportunity to win the national championship. And I think they could do it in style. I think this team is that good. Going into the season, I think they're one of the top favorites, maybe a slight dog to maybe Ohio State. But look for TCU to be on a vengeance all season long. I could see them running the table, and I could see them pounding teams by 30, 40 points while they do it.
Troy West from allplayswin.com. Man, I'm pumped for college football season. Can't wait for it to start. Can't wait for it to start covering individual games with you. Thanks so much, Troy.